Why the Americans defeated the Germans at sea, the secrets of US submarine and ship strategic maneuvers in the Atlantic. We'll take a detailed look at what happened, who's to blame, and the consequences. Support the channel by subscribing, commenting, and sharing this video. This topic is too serious to ignore. The Atlantic has always been a sea for gods, cold, merciless, eternal. At the start of the war, one nation ruled it. The Germans called the ocean their hunting ground. Their submarines, the wolf packs, sailed from the ports of Brest and Lorient and vanished into the mist. They moved like shadows, silent and invisible, striking without warning. Every ship crossing those waters lived with one fear, that somewhere beneath, a steel predator was already waiting. It was Germany's triumph, its pride, its empire under the waves. And for the first years, no one could stop them. Even the British, masters of the sea for centuries, could not. German U-boats sank merchant convoys, tankers, even warships. Hundreds of vessels vanished without trace. The Atlantic had become a graveyard of steel. But one day, a new adversary appeared on that graveyard. America entered the war, and with it came a new kind of logic: speed, coordination, and calculation. At first, the Americans underestimated their enemy. Their convoys sailed openly, their captains believed the ocean was too vast to be hunted. But the Germans knew the Atlantic like an old hunter knows his forest. They struck swiftly, precisely, ruthlessly. The first year was a shock to America. Tankers burned off the coast, debris washed ashore, and coastal cities saw flames dancing on the horizon. Scenes unseen since the days of pirates. Yet America is a country that learns faster than anyone. Where others surrender, it begins to think. The admirals of the United States Navy understood one thing: you cannot beat submarines with brute force, you beat them with the mind. And so, for the first time, the Atlantic began to breathe differently. The hunter had become the hunted. In secret rooms of the Pentagon, new centers of analysis were born. Ocean maps turned into chessboards. The Americans began to fight the Germans with their own weapon: silence and timing. No more chance encounters, no more blind patrols. Every convoy's route was calculated to the minute. Every flicker of radio signal could become bait. And somewhere between the ice of Iceland and the coast of Britain, a new kind of war began: a hunt for the hunters. Years later, former German Admiral Wolfgang Luth wrote in his memoirs, "We thought the Americans were heavy, predictable, slow. Then the ocean changed. It came alive. We no longer knew where the enemy was. Our boats began dying, not from torpedoes, but from anticipation." He wrote these words after Germany had already fallen, but his tone carried the same despair that haunted them underwater. The Americans created what the Germans could not: a single unified system. They linked reconnaissance, aviation, sonar ships, and code breakers into one living network. Everything that happened in the Atlantic was now reflected on massive command maps. Each intercepted German message, every coded burst of radio, was analyzed, translated, and turned into coordinates. Where once a submarine could vanish, now it was met with precision that bordered on prophecy. This was the dawn of a new era, a war fought not by strength, but by intellect. By spring, German captains were afraid to surface. They lived underwater for days, rationing air, listening through hydrophones to the eerie calm above. But that calm was deception. Somewhere in that silence, long-range American planes, Liberators, circled, equipped with new radar that pierced the night. Where the Germans once believed themselves invisible, they were now seen. Every flight could mean death. They called it the killing from nowhere. Because death now had no face, only the faint hum of propellers coming out of the fog. The Americans had changed the philosophy of naval warfare. They built victory not on courage alone, but on knowledge. While Europe still fought by tradition, Washington embraced science. Scientists and officers worked side by side, designing acoustic tracking systems. Every ship became more than a vessel. It became a sensor, a node in a giant web that listened to the ocean itself. That was America's strength, the ability to connect. If the Germans fought for honor, the Americans fought for results. One officer, Joseph Clifford, later said, "We didn't need to win heroically, we needed to win efficiently." And that was the moment Germany began to lose not at sea, but in the mind. Their boats still sailed, but fewer returned. Entire crews vanished. The Atlantic, once their empire, had turned into their tomb. By the middle of the war, German admirals could no longer lie to themselves. The Kriegsmarine had lost half its fleet. Those who survived knew the truth. America had learned to see the unseen. When Hitler demanded an explanation, one of his officers replied, "We are fighting men who can read our thoughts." That single sentence marked the turning point. Where power once ruled, now understanding prevailed. But to truly grasp what that meant, you must go down into the depths, to the cold silence where fear and genius battled every night. In the archives, fragments of American radio logs survive. You can hear the commanders arguing, laughing, making mistakes, but never giving up. Every strike against a submarine was not just a shot fired. It was the end result of thousands of calculations, weather reports, intercepted pings, and probabilities. America had turned the ocean into an equation, and the one who knows how to calculate always defeats the one who trusts luck. Still, victory was not clean or easy. It cost lives, courage, and sacrifice. The submarine hunters sailed for weeks, through raging seas. Every flight could end in death. American sailors knew they were facing the finest submariners in the world, but that respect for the enemy sharpened their resolve. Because in war, true superiority is born not from hatred, but from understanding. They knew that every sunken U-boat was both a triumph and a tragedy. And so, with every success came silence, not celebration. By the final years, the Atlantic had changed beyond recognition. On command maps, the German patrol lines vanished. Where their wolf packs once prowled, there were now empty grids. German signals no longer broke the static. American convoys crossed unharmed, and one spring morning, an aging German officer wrote in his journal, "We are no longer masters of the ocean. We are its victims." He did not know those words would become the final epitaph of Germany's submarine fleet. The Atlantic now belonged to those who could listen. And in that truth lies the greatest irony of all. America did not win through numbers or firepower or rage. It won through awareness, through attention to detail, through silence. It listened to the ocean like a living being, heard where its pulse beat, where danger moved. And when the time came, it struck not wildly, but with perfect precision, a strike born from thought, not fury. It was victory by intellect. After the war, German admirals admitted, America did not just win the ocean, it won the future. And they were right. Because every tool of modern war, radar, sonar, satellite tracking, began there, in the Atlantic. Every global network, every data system, every chain of coordination was born from that same principle: connect everything, and nothing will remain hidden. Historians still argue who was stronger, braver, more skilled. But the truth lies elsewhere. The Americans prevailed because they turned chaos into structure, noise into knowledge, knowledge into action. They did what great nations do. They transformed failure into science, and that science reshaped the world. For those who survived, all that remained was memory. One German captain, long after the war, once said, "When I look at the sea now, I no longer hear the waves. I hear intelligence beneath them." He was right. The ocean remembers. Beneath its endless blue lie the boats where men still sleep, believing themselves invincible. Their steel decays, but their story endures, because within it lies the answer to a greater question: how America defeated Germany at sea, not with bombs, not with arrogance, but with the power to think, to listen, and to anticipate. Perhaps that is the true formula of civilization, not who shouts the loudest, but who listens first. Because from silence, the future is born. Thus ended the Battle of the Atlantic. The Germans called the Americans the killers of submarines. The Americans called themselves sailors. History remembers them differently, as the people who turned the ocean against its former masters, and they did it not with hatred, but with mind. And if today someone asks, can you defeat a stronger enemy? The Atlantic itself gives the answer. It whispers through the tide, through the wind, through the eternal hum of its depths. Yes, if you know how to listen.